You're listening to Edging the Truth.
Welcome to episode 7, Edging the Truth. Today we're talking about something that I think is new for our group, where I think all of us may be in agreement that we don't necessarily believe that this one is true, but it's got enough conspiracy theory around it that it's worth us talking about. Today we're talking about the ratlines. If you don't know what the ratlines are, they're these interesting little mapping ways, I don't know what you want to, pathways for all of the Nazis to make it out of Germany and live their beautiful life somewhere else. And
sympathizer.
What was that? What was that, Fletch? No, definitely, I am not as definitely not a sympathizer anyway.
God damn, you're hot already. You're already hot.
But here,
intro.
Oh shit!
They make it to Argentina or Uruguay or the U.S. and they try to run their Nazi empire from afar. And there's a lot of stuff that we kind of uncovered while we did our research that kind of brings a lot of things to light, and including all the way up to the JFK assassination. And so there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about today, but one of the biggest things that we want to talk about is, did Hitler make it out? Did he make it through the rat lines? Did he take a seaplane and make it all the way to Argentina and then live out his life in Paraguay? That's all going to be discussed today. But first, I'm going to get some feedback from my friends. So we're going to bring it over to Andy and Brian and Dave. But we'll start off with Andy. What do you think?
The rat lines thing, yeah, it's really interesting. There's hard evidence of over like 750 different militarized camps that were known to train, house Nazis and Nazi officials that escaped to South America after World War II. So that's a known fact. Guys like Walter Ralph, who was credited with inventing the mobile gas chamber that was responsible for killing over 100,000 people. So there is something here that we had people in Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, literally all over South America. There were leaders in South America at this time and then into the 70s, 80s that were Nazis and that were Nazi sympathizers. As far as Hitler escaping from the bunker, or I'm sorry, the H-man, I know we're trying to avoid the algorithm. Anyway. So Hitler's death was first reported by the Germans. It wasn't reported on Allied radio. There was also the report of his death was done by an English professor, like that was a professor of like medieval history with no experience in, like being a detective or interviewing or interrogating people. His entire report was done on eyewitness accounts that were taken by Soviet soldiers from the like highest ranking Nazis that were left at the bunker after Hitler's death. Most of those statements were retracted after they were given a few years ago. And why would the top ranking Germans, like, why would they tell the Soviets? Why would they tell the enemies about it in the first place? So there's a little bit of a gray area there as far as his death goes. I think I wouldn't be shocked if he escaped. Like, I'm not going to sit here and I wouldn't. I'd be like, yeah, I could definitely see it happening. Did it happen? I don't know about that. There's the body double thing where, they take him and Eva Braun out, switch them out super quickly, where it was supposed to be, his secretary and the head of the Gestapo were supposed to be the only two ones that would have known about the body double thing. But like with the finding Hitler shit, it was a lot of, oh, well, it could have been this. Well, oh, there was a tunnel here that we found that he totally could have been. Oh, look at this guard shack. Like, if you were here, whoever lived here didn't want to be found. So, and like I said, there were 750 something camps that were Nazi camps found all over South America, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. So there is some validity there, but as far as I don't know, man. Like the report was they committed suicide around like 2:30 a.m. And then they were taken out and their bodies were burned. But there's
immediately
there's no real. So, and then in the 70s, the Soviets came out and said, "Oh no, we have it. We have the body. We have the remains, and we've had the remains since 1944 or 45, whenever he died." And then those get tested, and it's comes back. There's no Hitler DNA in those. It was matched to the DNA of a 40-year-old woman.
So that's a little bit. So only the skull was tested, right? And this is where it gets. This is where the gray area is, right? The skull was tested. It was a woman in her 40s, but then there's this jawbone with potential dental. That's because Hitler had really messed up teeth. And so then there's that too. So yeah, it gets very murky.
Apologies. I thought.
Yeah, no.
I
I just want to make sure.
No, thank you for clearing that up. I thought the jawbone was tested as well, but the jawbone was said to have matched dental records with Hitler. Yeah. So, but then once this skull was found to have no Hitler DNA, the Russians basically shut it down. Didn't let anybody else research it. So, there's the whole. Missing gold aspect and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but my initial thoughts, I know this has gone on too long already, but I'm open to the idea, boys.
Yeah,
I'm open.
I hear you. Let's go to Dave. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, this is very. I like that we're doing this episode right after we did the episode on John Wilkes Booth, and B, we're also recording this on Holocaust Remembrance Day, so I feel like it's appropriate that we're getting a double whammy here. But I feel no. I feel like in the same way there's a lot of mystery around the day around Hitler's death and what happened to his remains and all that stuff. In the same way that there was with John Wilkes Booth and Kennedy, right? The missing brain pieces and all this stuff that happens, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are common threads that seem to keep happening. There's not definitive evidence that this person died, and so we can't say that they did. And I'm okay with that logic. Unfortunately for me, all of the other stuff that supposedly has to happen to get to where these theories of all of the shows that we watched are supposed to have happened, they don't add up, and there's no evidence that specifically relates to Hitler. I think it's also curious, that the resources, the kind of three main resources that at least that I compiled was an episode of this show, Chasing Conspiracies. There's a British produced show. And then the 3 seasons of Hunting Hitler, which I've been following since it came out. I've always been fascinated by this stuff. My dad was born in the middle of World War II. He was a World War II movie junkie. The Nazis were the best bad guys of all time in all of his favorite movies, right? So to watch all that unfold, but yet there being only really one guy behind all of this theory. This journalist, Gerard Williams, who wrote a book called Grey Wolf, Hitler's Escape to Argentina, and his theory is all based on the fact that both Hitler and Martin Bormann escaped to Argentina, and there's the path and all that stuff. Now, between this guy writing his book and the TV series of Hunting Hitler, the theory has changed because of the path and what they've been able to prove and where there's evidence and blah blah blah. And we can talk more about the details of what they thought in the show. But I think it's even more curious that Martin Bormann has now been confirmed to have died in Germany the way everybody said he did at the very end of the war. His body was found in the 70s. His DNA was tested in the late 90s. It was him. He never left Germany. End of story. So if half of the theory is already out the window, then to me, all of this kind of becomes even more doubtful and less probable, because Martin Bormann was supposedly the guy who orchestrated all this stuff. He's the guy that supposedly put it all in motion and made it happen and made it made it possible for Hitler to do all of these things. And whether it's this new, some of the evidence from hunting Hitler that was at least interesting and compelling, is a new escape route from Hitler's bunker that was never found before, or at least wasn't included in evidence in the past. The thought that he would go to this sanatorium, this hospital, that he would be safe there, that the Allies wouldn't think to bomb a hospital, and so of course they wouldn't think to get him there. That he would then make it to this other, to Norway. I think was that right? Norway.
Yes, it was. Yes, to
and yeah, where they had
That's where the
U-boat was, right? Exactly, and they knew there were U-boats there, and they found the seaplane and and then they found documents that said there were definitely U-boats refueling, or planes refueling U-boats, and vice versa, and blah blah blah. So it makes sense that he could get to Argentina, and obviously we found all these Nazi compounds in South America. That's not open for discussion. That's fact. There's plenty of evidence to prove that there were lots and lots and lots of Nazis in South America in the years after the war. But none of it points to Hitler. And maybe one guy in one interview who says he thought it was maybe 25 years later. Come on, some of these people never saw Hitler in their life. And
I agree.
And all it takes is one guy to say that's the Fuhrer. Well, who was the Fuhrer at the end of the war? After Hitler killed himself, it was Martin Bormann, right? They had I can't remember exactly who it was, but there was a whole bunch of new dudes took new roles when Hitler's will, right? So anybody could have been identified under these monikers. It could, under the concept of the Fourth Reich, right? Whoever the current leader was, that would have been the person. They would have called him that name, and they would have just gone, "Oh, that's him."
The moment he was dead, they would have called the next person.
Right, exactly.
And
it's
they had body
you say the
doubles for him
president,
too,
right? We call the president, whether they're the current president or the past president, and whoever the current president, it gets that name, right? So it's the same thing, right?
I think that's a good point. Let's go to Brian real quick. Brian, what do you think about this real quick?
Don't you dare fucking interrupt him.
All right, so I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, do I think, to go back to the title of the episode, do I think that ratlines themselves were a thing? Yes, in history they were a thing. There were people that escaped and all that stuff, but if you even look at the history of the ratlines and the timing of those escapes and stuff, it was all over the place and all that stuff, but none of them kind of correspond to around the time really when he died. It was everything after that. Germany was fully occupied from from all sides. The Russians were just ruthless and doing all that stuff, and we were just trying to sort stuff out with camps. I just don't think that the most famous person ever would have slipped through that, because on the flip side, that anytime they came in contact with other Germans, they would have been like, there's the Fuhrer, Reich's still alive, let's roll, and it's just, there's just none of those stories. It's just none of that, that happened, where I just don't think that he would have all of a sudden sobered up from all the drugs he was on, also documented many drugs. I mean, World War II was fought on drugs, boys. Our soldiers were all hepped up on meth. Their soldiers were on speed. I mean, it's the same difference, but that was WW Deuce. Grandpa was all hepped up on goofballs. So, I mean, it's like I said, that was I just don't think that he kicked all of those habits he had at the end and was sober up enough to make this journey uninterrupted and so hidden and all this stuff, and to be the egomaniac that he was, to all of a sudden put all that away and be spirited away in the night. No, every German soldier he came across would have been like, keep the faith, I'm still alive. All you know what I'm saying? They been trying to keep it alive and not pass it on. And and it's just, the History Channel is just another, they went and coming up for 3 goddamn seasons of this show. And it's a stretch. I mean, God, even
I thought it was Viceland. It's
the episodes I watched. They must have repeated the same scene 3 or 4 times at every commercial intro and outro, verbatim, the same scene. And coming up here in the last 5 minutes of the show, but I'm going to tell you about it for every 10 minutes. It's the buildup. It's all that stuff. Frankly, I was thinking that as I was kind of reading the Wikipedias and stuff and kind of getting prepared for this, I realized how much my real history has been mixed with TV history, movies, and video game history. You know what I'm saying? Like, according to Vanguard, I'm all about this other Reich that's escaping and called whatnot. The Call of Duty I'm playing right now has got me all Nazi'd up. And it's like they're Nazis, but it's like they're still romanticized on so many things. They're in games as the eternal bad guy, since games 1, since Doom Uno, all the way back.
Wolfenstein,
all there's original, and still right now, the current game we are playing right now, I am killing Nazis on the regular. Okay,
yeah.
like it's like so it's like then you're like with video game history, and so like as a person in this modern society where you have all, and then there's the flip side of all the, you don't want to talk about the actual today Nazis, the Proud Boys, the sort of whatnots that we're not affiliated with in any way, shape, or form, and do not endorse here on the program of Edge and the Truth. It's all those connotations where people are, it is a pop culture thing, right, wrong, or indifferent in society right now. And so that's why this show exists, because it's a topic that they think they can make money on. And this conspiracy, there's been some, but it just doesn't go back that far. And it's always kind of been there in the fringes, but it's more of a modern construct, like so many of these things we're seeing, because somebody made a show on it, and that show turned into a thing, which turned into a Reddit, which turned into this. But I mean, like I said, so everybody's, skewed on the WW2. I think it was war, and at the end of the war, I just think everything was so messy, but we also had that stuff on so locked down in Germany that he would not have got out. Nobody was getting out of there. Nobody was, especially the most wanted man in the world. Even when they told the next officers he was, because Hitler, it's not like he killed himself and like the war was over. He killed himself and the war went on. The war went on, the other people assumed command. Stuff happened. So I don't think at any time he would have reasserted command, is what I'm saying. And is it possible? Maybe 1%, but like I'm feeling more like Bigfoot possible than
Bigfoot was an alien. We've established that.
back.
So Bigfoot was real.
Sorry, I was just I was spelling it out.
No, I think that you bring up a good point. I think that a lot of people realize that by even midway through the war, that Hitler was more just a face piece of the war, and a lot of even his top generals were like, hey, this guy is not a good leader, There was a lot of people that were pushing for him to go in a different direction. And so for you to talk about like that piece of it, you're right. I think there's a good chance that maybe he wasn't the main person to get out of Germany. But I think that the ratlines themselves are very well documented. And I think that, there's a good chance that a lot of higher up German leaders did make it out of Germany. But Hitler, I'm leaning towards Brian saying he probably didn't make it out of Germany, in my opinion. So, but there's plenty of other high-staking leaders that I think did make it out, and
very, very much so. Like ratlines were a thing, for real. Yeah. It was a thing.
Yeah.
But was this particular guy making it out? No.
Yeah. What about the bunker they supposedly built in Antarctica, or that was the
bro? We got a lot of bunkers in Antarctica.
Yeah, that was a great
story down there.
There was an expedition in 1939 by Nazi U-boats that they said was a science mission, but it was led by the head of their Air Force. And then it was said that they used Argentina as a like a halfway point to the South Pole or whatever. And after the war, there was documents of U-boats, like another Nazi mission being sent there, and then an American mission being sent there, which was debunked as saying they wanted to train the American soldiers to fight in like cold climates, because they were about to fight fucking Soviet Union. So I don't know. There's just a lot of interesting stuff there. I didn't know what you guys thought, because when that came up there, I was like, okay, like I don't believe there's some big fucking tunnel in Antarctica that the Nazis built with hospitals
Nazi
and all
tunnel?
of this shit. I was
Nazi
like, this is where you lose
with
me.
the technology of that time.
In 1939, they built that.
We were in prop plane country. Okay, they were not jets were at the end.
Yeah.
We were prop planing that shit, yo.
Yeah,
come on.
And then they're like, well, we found this massive tunnel system in Austria, which was like, okay, yeah, that's a lot more feasible because that's
Mhm.
Austria and it's not 9,000 miles away. And also not a huge fucking block of ice.
Right.
Yes.
I think that the most plausible piece of this for the Ratlines is when they talk about how they set them up going through Norway and then coming back down through, like, how that was all planned out was actually really smart for them to create to get out of that place. And then once they got to Argentina, they were under a president that was a Nazi sympathizer. So they were safe there in Argentina until he was out of power. And then they moved their group
next
to
guy
Paraguay.
was
Yeah,
fucking a Nazi till the 80s.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you see the situation where they take out the Colombian president, and then the likelihood that they may have played a role in the starting of the Cold War with everything, and then possibly even the assassination of Kennedy. I mean, it's just there's so much to think about. Like this all was able to happen because of these rat lines, right? Because they were able to get enough people out of that country to preserve their ideals, to keep pushing it on, and trying to start a World War III. But if we go back to whether or not Hitler made it out, and whether he went to Antarctica or to Paraguay or wherever, I have a hard time believing, even though there's supposed people that saw him in these countries, like
30
the one
different
lady's aunt who had to take Hitler's jacket off. Like, yeah, he was there. She had to take off his jacket and had to invite him in. And it's like, I feel like you hear these stories and there's just not enough evidence to say, yeah, he was definitely there. But did you guys have any one piece of fact that was like, okay, maybe that is true. Maybe he did make it there? Because I'm having a hard time coming up with anything that says, yeah, he was definitely there.
So this one, it's dicey, but I could kind of see it. It was what I was talking about earlier, where they're like, oh, we found a fifth door. He definitely could have got out of this. And they found the exit and it lined up with a path that said that could have been used as a makeshift runway. But then there was record of a plane leaving Berlin on that day, which I don't know if I believe it, but it sets it up. Like there was a couple things I would think, like they mentioned something that I thought was interesting, that it was pretty big back in that time, that like the world leaders and powerful world leaders had body doubles. Like Stalin was confirmed to have multiple. I think Churchill had one. Hitler was believed to have a few. Depending on how much they look like him, I think there is some credence there where they could, where the story, where okay, they get the Eva Braun and Hitler body doubles, then they assassinate them, and then those are the bodies that get burnt. They send actual H-man and the B lady on their way, and they do escape. But I think Brian brought up a good point earlier. It's just, and we talked about this with John Wilkes Booth, I don't know if a guy that's, crazy enough to try to take over the entire planet is just going to one day decide when he's defeated that, all right, that's enough. And, obviously the, history tells us that, Martin Bormann and Hitler, they put these plans into place. The Nazi leaders seemed to know that they were getting pretty close to defeat before it happened. And started plans like specific economic things. It is believed that, actually, the guy that started the ECC that eventually turned into the EU was a Nazi, a top-ranking Nazi. It's been said that the Nazis were, the greatest thieves of all time, with the amount of gold, rare paintings, fucking treasure that was found. I don't remember the pit that was found, but I don't know. The one thing I think that was compelling enough was, the fact that there was a recorded flight out of Berlin that night, and the fact that there was an undiscovered tunnel, and the fact there's no remains, there's no body.
One thing I'll talk about your story right there is how shitty of a body double actor did they have going to work that day? Showing up and be like, all right, here's on the agenda. Yeah, we're gonna kill you guys, and just like,
No, I don't think they told him. That's
Yeah.
oh no,
what
I
think.
know, but like just going to work thinking, oh, I'm just a body double, and
Like, he had
then
multiple,
finding out,
so
Oh,
he
how
had to
shitty
pick
of a
which
day
one.
was. Okay,
yeah, for them, like, I mean, that's
you
a
were like,
real,
thank God he didn't pick me
that's a
for
real
today's
shitty day
job.
of work, you know.
Oh shit.
But yeah, dude, can I?
All right, Brian,
can I stack
what
on
did you
his
find?
stacks? So no, I mean, like, they're like, even the plane thing, like, that was like, I was like, yeah, okay, a plane left, but like, once again, it just goes back to like, but they made it through the air superiority of everybody else who was up there, and they were, no other Germans were up there. It was still a full-on war. Where did that plane land? Where did it refuel? Where a plane left, but who knows where it ever left, made it to, whatever. Like, we're just assuming that this is a, like I said, we're talking prop planes, yo. This wasn't a jet.
No, I
They were
agree.
on a
But was
prop
there
plane.
anything that you found that made you think that maybe this was true?
For Hitler, I don't. I mean, it goes back to, what did I have? It's like, it's stories. It's like, oh yeah, I saw Hitler. He just came through here. You know what I'm saying? It's the dropping the famous name or whoever. It's like, yeah, and I'm Adolf Hitler. You know what I'm saying? Or like, and like, let me just tell you, like, especially like, let's talk about body doubles or whatever. It's like, you want to find somebody who looks like Hitler? I can find you somebody who looks like Hitler right now. I can go down the Las Vegas Strip. I can find you 2 or 3.
Right. Well,
just
that would
like
be
Hitler
that
down
could
in
be where the
mustache.
sightings are.
You know what I'm
in
saying?
South America,
Like, it's
Yeah,
especially
a lot
with a
of
bunch of fucking Nazis.
It was the homogenous master race. A lot of those white people looked alike. These homogenous
And you mean to
whites.
tell me,
So
and
it's,
the,
I guess
with all the territory that they had covered, that that the Germans at one point had covered in Europe, that Hitler didn't have the word out of like, find me people that look like me.
yeah.
The thousands and thousands and thousands of people that
I'm
were
sure.
photographed for
Moreover, all the
papers
people
and how
that
many that would line up
emulated
to
him.
do it? I mean,
all
totally,
the people, but all the
totally.
people all the German people that emulated him, he was the great leader. They, they wanted to look like him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, that was the thing. They wanted it where everybody wanted to look like the same. That was their whole shtick. And like, it's, so it's like, there was a lot of people that probably look like Hitler. And especially after he was dead, it's like, no, I'm just going to carry on this. I'm going to look like him. I'm just going to carry on and say I'm him and keep going. Like, there was a hell of an aftermath of that war. Like, and it, like I said, everybody was all hepped up on drugs, and those drugs stopped. There's just picking up the country. Like I said, the Russians were brutal in all the stuff they did. I mean, even for us, especially with the camps and everything, we were pretty brutal to the people that were there after we saw that stuff too. So we're like, so it was, and like, some people hunted down Germans forever. It was a whole thing, a worldwide thing. Still trials to this day if they find you.
it's still happening. It's still
So
happening even.
Like I said, so as a fundamental claim for the Ratlines, Ratlines existed. It was a thing. A lot of people got out. They got that Nazi gold and they spread it around, and enough money does seal enough lips.
We should talk about that gold.
And but I mean, overall, it's like, I mean, and just the Antarctica thing and all that stuff. I mean, it's like, I remember when Dr. Jones was in the desert and the Nazis were trying to get the Ark of the Covenant, and that's our history, right? That's our history. Or that time when the Nazis tried to open a portal to hell, and a tiny little devil demon, the Hellboy, I think they called him, came out. This is history, right? That's
Brian,
history.
if I may, I think this is what you were talking about earlier, with you kind of mixing your everything with your.
Are you sure?
With your
Are you
first
sure?
Of all, your first source was Wikipedia. Which
but isn't it on here?
Just anybody can edit. Anyone can edit.
Yeah.
And there was another woman here, and it says all the Nazis died. No, is that no? They were looking for rare artifacts.
Like, I remember.
Take it as fact.
I remember when they found Mengele. Like, I remember being a kid.
I just put a point on it. Yeah. Overall, it's plausible that it all existed, but if we're talking about the Hitler-Eva thing, I'm more that the man took his own life. If you watch all the stuff, if you really go beyond just what we were looking for, Ratlines, to the end of Hitler's life, and yet other history channels like the ending days of Hitler and other history channel shows as well, where they talk about how bad his drug use were and how he was lashing out at people and just murdering people, and people wanted to kill him. His own people wanted to kill him.
Well, he had syphilis. I mean, he was nuts.
And it's plus the syphilisness. You know what I'm saying? If he actually had that, plus his fucked up teeth, so he couldn't eat around there, and all this stuff. But the point is, for him, no, rat lines totally existed. It was a thing. There's still descendants of those people today because they got out.
Well, I want to go to
So-
Red real quick. Red, was there one piece that stuck out to you that said, okay, Hitler may have escaped?
Yeah, I mean, I come back to the very beginning of where this story starts, and that's the way he was immediately, he and both Eva Braun were immediately cremated, and
Yes.
and that was the end of, and they were in a bag. No one ever actually saw Hitler
Yes.
killed. There's never been any account of that, at least not in the documented story. Again, Andy brought up earlier, I love this whole thing about the guy who wrote the report
Yeah,
on the last
that's a
days
good
of
one.
Hitler was this fucking like mythology professor who was like a good storyteller probably, and was
Yeah.
asked to
Sell books.
craft a really fucking good story.
Trying to sell
which-
books.
Yeah, which he did, and he wrote it really well. It's super clear. I looked up the documents. You can read them online. They're fabulous. It's a very well written document. Based on, as Andy said, lots of testimony that was collected via Soviet interrogations, which were also many later recanted. So you go, okay, so how much of that report that we've based history on is real, is factual, is correct? And if any of that starts to come into doubt, well, then there's doubt, right? We talk about, in our court of law, right? Is there a shred of, is there this sliver of possibility? And if there is, then we can't say for sure. And
Right.
and because there is this little sliver of possibility, especially around his specific moments after his actual death, and the moments after his death, and where his remains went, those three things are enough to give me some doubt. It's not enough to convince me. It's not enough for me to say Hitler got out of Germany, because there's a whole bunch of other things, as I said earlier, that have to happen. And supposedly one of the key people involved with making all that happen could not have been there to make all of that stuff happen. Or at least they had to have made it all happen before they died, very shortly after Hitler's supposed, staged suicide. So all of the other evidence points to a generic plan, which could have been any one of these people we've talked about, could have been people that were talked about later. One of my favorite stories around this is the Odessa, which was also this network of former Nazis.
Odessa.
And
Odessa.
One of the stories, I rewatched
the ocarina of the story.
I rewatched the great Frederick Forsyth based movie, The Odessa File, and one of the great stories behind that is the Simon Wiesenthal, one of the great Nazi hunters, was a technical consultant on the book and the movie, but is also a character in the movie itself. And in it, it's basically about a journalist who decides he comes upon the diary of a man who's committed suicide, a Jewish Holocaust survivor, who says, it turns out that he knows where the guy that ran his concentration camp is. And it was a real guy. They used a real guy's name, Edward Roshman. And he was, in fact, a real guy who escaped to Argentina. And Wiesenthal intentionally made up shit about this guy so that it would be in the book and in the movie to potentially rile up this guy enough to get him to come out of hiding, and or to get enough people to know about this guy and his story to potentially do some research and expose him. And as luck would turn out, he was exposed by a guy who saw the movie. Now, this was in the 70s. So,
that was in theater. That wasn't like home watching a DVD.
No. This was,
theater.
Absolutely. And in a book published by an author whose books were published all over the world, in print all over the world. So, to me, there's a lot more of interesting conspiracy theory stuff that happens about, in the 60s, in the 70s. Like, where did that gold go? Where in South America? We know where it went in Germany. At least that's what one of our sources that we watched talks a lot about. But where did it go in South America? And has it made its
Mhm.
way? Has it made its way into businesses here as a result of that? I mean, it has been, whatever, 70, 60 years, 60 years plus another 20. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lot of time for money to grow, even if it's just sitting in a damn bank in Argentina.
Yeah.
So and I know we didn't focus on that per se as the topic of our episode, but I feel like maybe there's room for us to explore that in a future episode. Again,
Where'd the gold go?
Yeah, I
certainly
think
there's
that
the
Lebowski-
Monuments Men and all the art stuff and all these things. They're still
Another movie.
coming up with that stuff. Yeah,
Well,
exactly. But again,
well-
based on fact, and that is factual. There were a group of people
John
that the
Goodman was
government,
for sure there.
with the John Goodman's in everything good.
Well, I thought it was interesting too, like the gold that was supposedly found in Austria, that whatever forest that started with a K or whatever on the side of a hill, that was like 100 boxes of German gold that was found by the American military. Then this guy whose job, all of his research for 40 years has been about Nazi gold, and then specifically like this one event. And he interviewed the guy that was in charge of the from the American military that oversaw, the extraction of these 100 boxes of gold. And he said, I thought it was interesting when he was talking about the people that came to get it, because he said it was just 3 dudes. And he made the comment, it's like, wow, doesn't it seem like you should have a few more people to guard all this gold? And they're like, we're trying not to be seen. We want to be as like inconspicuous as possible. And come to find out that those 3 officers or whatever were what was it? Securative something?
Yeah, they were OSS, which
which essentially CIA, which kind of made me think, obviously if the United States is doing this and they're trying to be as secretive as possible, I'm sure the Germans had some type of force like this that potentially could have helped get Hitler out of Berlin.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought.
I mean, we were in competition with the Soviets for recovery of shit. I mean, that's well documented as well. Like we would have been secretive had we discovered 100 boxes of gold.
Well, and there's still millions of
tell
pieces of artwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to tell them, hey guys, guess what we found.
Well, I thought it was funny. They also was like, when we opened the cave, like there's no record of the soldiers taking any of the gold. It's like, why the fuck would they tell anybody?
Yeah,
you're like, if the 4 of us in 1950 or 40, whenever the fuck they found this shit, walked into that bunker and we found $500 million worth of gold, jewelry, all the original fucking paintings.
Yeah, you're not sticking one bar.
You don't think we're like looking at each other and going, "Hey boys," and I know we're probably not the best example, but like these, what?
I saw that movie. I saw that movie. It's called 3 Kings with George Clooney.
There was still classic.
But there's 4 kings in our brigade.
There was plenty of people in the military profiteering on our side as well at the end, where they were taking stuff, shipping it home, sailboats, artwork. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but it's. I mean, yeah. Even once again, I'll say as Kelly's Heroes, a fictional, that historical thing had Clint Eastwood. I think Don Rickles was in it. They went and got that Nazi gold out of that town. I mean, yeah, a lot of people did. A lot of people got that gold and took it home.
But I think that it's more than just the gold. Like, there's thousands of pieces of artwork that are missing.
Well, they're still missing, heirlooms forever. They're returning because, like I said, they were secreted away, sold. A lot of people bought their way out of Germany, and like I said, money cures a lot of things.
Yeah,
and that's why a lot of these kind of lower level people, or even mid to highs, could get out because they still had some, they had the means to get out. But I mean, like I said, even if Hitler had his SS and stuff, and even the reason why all these people were spiriting away 100 boxes and trying to keep them on the down low and get them out is because they were trying to fund the Fourth Reich. There's one thing that no matter where you got to go, it runs on money. And if you had money, you could go rebuild anywhere. I mean, that's just civilization. That's video games again. You got the money, go start over somewhere else. So
I think that this one thing this episode has kind of let us lead into is a future episode about the killing of John F. Kennedy, right? and talking about how this may have impacted that event and how the SS may have played a part in that as well, and
Yeah, I mean,
think
South American Nazi conspiracies, I feel like it's its own standalone thing because they did a lot of stuff down there. I mean, if anything,
You're right.
if anything, that of this whole hunting Hitler thing, that was the stuff where I'm like, oh damn, what's all this over here?
Yeah.
Because
Well, and I think that one thing that we have to say,
they uncovered some
so
horrible stuff by other people.
and none of it could have happened though without these rat lines. And I think the rat lines, while are crazy to think about, the genius behind them and figuring out how they worked and how, because like Brian mentioned earlier, like we're not talking about jets, we're talking about prop planes, we're talking about seaplanes,
steamships,
we're talking about
engines
and
U-boats.
I think we should think about U-boats too, because
guys died making that trip.
I mean, it's incredible to think that in that day and age where I'll say technology wasn't the greatest, for them to be able to make that many trips, to be able to build a society, is a massive undertaking.
To service those subs and all that stuff because they couldn't really dock anywhere, and not get more parts. So
they carry that much fuel to be able to fuel planes and
maintain those fuel
that
stations.
was what the U-boats were for. They said the U-boats used this gas station across.
But the U-boats still had to refill somewhere. They weren't making.
But I'm saying to keep that much fuel on the U-boats is incredible.
Right.
And the way that they circumvented different places and used Norway and they bought their way everywhere, and it was crazy to read.
They also
about.
had control of a lot of these countries at the time too.
Yes.
Yeah, let's not forget that the church was involved too. Like a lot of this happened via the lines of protection via the church, which is also that there's a whole. We could do entire conspiracies, multiple episodes on that.
In the church, I mean, that's a crazy.
It's crazy,
man.
It's crazy. It's crazy in retrospect.
It really is, and I think that that's one thing we got to realize about the human race. Like when war is involved, like everything kind of goes out the window, right? Like it's an interesting thing.
It's messy business. On no matter what side you're on, it's messy business, and everybody's trying to make some money, do their thing, and try to get out alive better off than they were. And that was it.
So I think that we're all in agreement that Hitler probably died in Germany, and there's a very slim chance that he made it out. I mean, and I'm talking about really slim. Like there are some things like Red's point, which was actually going to be my point if he didn't say it, about how quickly they were cremated. I think that's really sketchy. I think the plane taking off on the exact day that they said it take off and like showing the way that they could have gotten out. I mean, there's still that droplet of a chance that he did make it out of there. But how far did he make it? What did it really mean? And at that point, did it even matter? So those are kind of the questions that I think we leave ourselves at.
I was going to say, if your plan is to leave the question in the air, like if you're Adolf Hitler and you want there to be doubt about whether you're still out there or not, then wouldn't you dispose of your body that way?
Yeah.
Like leave no trace and make the Allies chase false leads and be busy with chasing you down because there's no one seen you dead.
And the FBI did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also it perpetuates the power mythology. Like, you know what, guys? He's out there somewhere and he's gonna be proud. He's gonna be proud when you get to meet him one day, he's gonna be proud of what you've done.
Yeah.
I think it serves so many purposes for him to sell the story himself in his own plans. And that to me tells everything I need to know.
But I we've done a little bit of research on this over the past couple weeks as we've prepared for this. But I want to leave it open for our viewers to say, is there something that we didn't think about that you've read, you've heard, that you think that, Hitler did make it out? Or do you agree with us? Do you think that Hitler definitely didn't make it out and, the rat lines were served a purpose, but they didn't serve Hitler's purpose in making out of there? So I would love to hear that from anybody. And definitely leave a comment about what you think, or if there's another conspiracy that you want to hear us talk about, definitely call the number below. I think Red's had it going through, or it's right there. Call the number 917-979-6071. Andy could have said it better. probably faster, quicker. But
Whatever.
but no, I think this was an interesting episode. Definitely interesting to think about, and I love the idea of talking about things that kind of make you think about how it changed history.
Yeah.
So,
But if you want to watch what we watched, it was, like we said, the series Hunting Hitler. And then what was the other documentary called, Red?
Yeah, Chasing Conspiracies had a great episode
What was the
called
episode?
The Death of Hitler, I believe
Yeah.
is what it's called.
Yeah.
And
if you want to
it's
watch
a great episode.
and you
And
want to
then-
watch something that is not history but also fun, that kind of is around. There's a show called Hunters,
Yeah.
which I believe has another season coming out soon, which is fantastic as well.
Yeah,
So
the book all this is based on is called Grey Wolf: Hitler's Escape to Argentina by Gerard Williams. If you want to read the quote unquote journalistic documentation of all of this, and again, this predates the show Hunting Hitler, so in a way, it's out of date at this point.
And then it was from like what, 2016?
Yeah, it's not that old. Yeah. Well, the show we watched was from 2016. I believe the book's from 2012, and it was also produced into a docudrama. So if you want to, there's lots. There's also all kinds of
That
stuff.
mix.
And what's amazing is there's one dude who's involved with all of it. As we're starting to
Making
find
our
out,
money.
a lot of these conspiracies come from one place. We love this though. I love the idea of the minutia conspiracies that maybe
Yeah.
one guy thought up and
it got
people have
legs.
jumped. Yeah, it got
Yeah.
legs for whatever reason. It was believable. It tapped into something.
There was-
Whether it's what's
Like-
the Slender Man thing, you know,
Yeah.
I loved when that was a phenomenon. I think that we can talk about all kinds of stuff like that.
Oh man.
Well,
got
I think
lots
the
of
idea
stuff
that we just take everything that people tell us for granted. Like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely conspiracies out there, and I think that
Mhm.
that's exactly why we talk about these things.
But can we put a button on this for all of us then? Because I think this is our first episode unanimous of the like. So I think, are we all in agreement? Ratlines, yes. Hitler made it out, no.
Yeah, I think.
Oh my god!
I think
are you
I got
working me,
Andy's ready
you
for the
son
hot
of a
take.
bitch?
Well, no, I still think that there's still
Oh my god!
very very small chance. Like I
Listen,
said,
I'm with you, Brian.
Cremated body, no remains. Reported by German radio, not by the Allies. Story and report from a medieval times history professor.
Dinner
in
and tournament, yeah.
England that had dinner and tournament.
and a plane that took off.
All the accounts in that report were done by Soviet soldiers, that were eyewitness accounts that were later retracted. Most of the people that were quoted in that report didn't ever even talk to the guy that wrote it. I'm not going to say that he didn't die in there, but I'm not going to say he
Oh my
didn't get
God.
out, boys.
I-
Damn, you're gonna be that guy. Do you mean to tell me? Let me put this another way. Do you mean to
Oh my
tell me
God. I
that
watched all
you
that
are
TV
going to
for nothing.
teach your son, little Fudge, that Hitler did not die in the bunker? Is that what you're going to teach him?
All right. Well, I think the better question is
Let's not get crazy.
no. I agree with Fudge. I think-
Are you
I
gonna
think-
share
I
this
think-
ethos with your son?
Yeah, I'm going right. Yeah, I'm telling him right after this.
Listen, I think Fudge is right. I think you teach him that he may not have died in the bunker, not that he didn't.
I'm not saying you guys are wrong at all.
No, and I agree with Fudge. Like I said right before Brian
not 100%.
put the button in there, it's like
Yeah,
I said,
I'm 50-50.
there's a 50. I'm more like I'm more like 1090. I'm more like 1090. Like
Yeah.
10% he made out.
I'll give you the 10.
From a gambling man, you're
I'll
a
go.
50-50?
I'll align with that.
Not 50-50. There's okay.
I'm a 1090. I'm just telling
He
you.
probably fucking died there, but I could see a scenario where he got out.
So
I've-
1090.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like John Wilkes Booth. You
All
can
right,
see the
1090.
scenario
That's how I like
where
my
it went
hamburger
on.
too. So that's
But
good.
did it?
You know, that's-
Probably.
What does that
fucking
even
not.
mean, Brian?
You don't like the
That's why we
90-10
did the
hamburger? That's the
we
good
wouldn't do
stuff.
the
Only 10%
episode
fat.
if there wasn't some kind of argument here, right?
Well, this is also a first because there
You're
was no
just
girl I
a
ever
line
banged that had
crosser.
anything to do with Nazi rat lines. I mean,
Yeah.
all right, I did bang a girl that thought she was a Nazi, but she was more of just a skinhead. So I don't know if that's the same
What?
thing.
What?
Sympathizer.
Yeah, sympathizer. I agree with that one right
I
there.
sympathize with that ass is what I did.
Just admitted it.
I
So,
mean, one week you're
my-
dating a girl, she's got hair. The next week she doesn't. And
My
you're like, well, I still
grandfather-
want to have sex with her.
My grandfather fought in World War II, and at my dad's house, I've got a trunk of an actual Nazi armband,
Mhm.
a dagger that he brought back, and one of his notebooks with fucking his notes and like war formations in it. When I opened that, man, I was drunk and stoned, but for the first time, it was surreal. It was like I started tearing up. But I never met him. But he was it was really cool to see that.
I actually had a similar story. I was over at my buddy Jay's house, and he's like, "Hey, let me show you something." And he takes me, and he brings out this big thing, and he opens it up, and it is a massive Hitler flag that like flew over the compound when his dad was part of one of the groups that like took over one of these compounds, and his dad took the flag, and it was a big trophy for them to take these home. And so like, it's crazy to think about, because like when I look at that flag, it's like, oh man, that's evil, that's terrible. Like you think about all the things that are bad with that flag, and then you also think about like how good it was for our soldiers to take those, and
He took that flag as a symbol of ending that.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
hey, we just we owned
Like,
you.
look at
you
this
know?
symbol of hate I took from those people. I took this hate from them.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I definitely I hear that, Fudge, and just really thankful for your grandpa, man. That's
For
that's
real.
cool.
Yeah.
Goat. He was he also his nickname was Hop, and I've gone by that. People have called me that for years. And when I found that out, it's like, oh shit! You just you feel a connection to somebody you never knew. So
Yeah,
It's
cool,
awesome.
man. That's really cool.
But anyway, follow us on Twitter and Instagram
Mhm.
and our Facebook at Edging the Truth. Help us build that up. We drop clips. We drop links to all the episodes, stuff like that. Go to the website, www.edgingthetruth.com. It's got all of our episodes. It's got bios, ways you can follow our individual stuff like that. Sorry, I just hijacked that from you, One Lung, but
No, that's all good, bro. You're good.
Tell your friends.
Hey,
Spread the
friend.
word of the,
Tell your friend
spread
who
the
tells a
word of
friend.
the edging of the truth.
And then we do have a voicemail we need to get to. I'm sure we'll discuss that, not on this episode, but keep sending those in as well, because we
Yes,
definitely
we
want to
will.
get to
And we
those.
love hearing them. So
Yes.
send them in.
Yes.
Get the voicemails
Yes.
coming.
Any
Join the
comments?
Discord.
Join the Discord as well. We probably should tweet that link out.
Yeah.
And throw it on
We'll put our episode resources.
It'll be
and
we'll
stuff
put it
in
on
there
the
for
we'll
you.
put it on the screen.
We'll put it on the screen here
Put it on the
as
screen.
well. Discord, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe as well. YouTube.com/edgingthetruth. Throw us a comment if you like what you hear. Throw us a comment. Tell us. We love the feedback, whether it's good or bad, Brian.
And shout out Josh Giordano.
Yeah, shout out. Yeah, just tell us if you like it. Tell us if you don't. We love it. We love if you're tuning in or not. Tell us what you think. Is Hitler? Did he survive? The H-man.
Also, shout out to Trevor James, who told me how much speed his grandpa did in World War II.
I'm sure my grandpa was too. I'm sure they were fucked up.
Yeah.
Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.
Bitch.
Visit edgingthetruth.com for more information and links to all our social media and podcast directories.